Welcome back to Watts the Obsession. This video is going to take a look at Cervi 319, the oil site where Chris Watts infamously drove to from his home in Frederick, Colorado on August 13th, 2018 with his wife Shanann on the floorboard of the back seat and his two daughters Bella and Celeste also in the back seat of his work truck. Not only are we going to be taking a look at the drone footage of Cervi 319, but we're also going to look at the route that Chris Watts took to get to Cervi 319, the historical weather for that date, and some reports and other related news that is related to Cervi 319. I do want to let you know that this video contains sensitive information and viewer discretion is advised.
They found those children in tanks that were nearly full. And as I have learned from you, the full capacity of these tanks is somewhere between 600 and 700 barrels of oil. That's a lot. So let's just say nearly full is 500, correct?
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, the strange thing to me is openly available, you can find the production rate of that well. And at its best, it was producing about 200 barrels per month. So it leads me to believe that, you know, the oil probably wasn't completely drained out by whoever put the girls in these tanks. You know, they probably shifted the liquids from one tank over to the other one, opened, put it in, and then shifted the liquids back to the other side. That requires quite a bit of technical knowledge, and it does take a certain amount of time.
And let me stop you there,
operation.
Because that was my next question. Obviously, that drill site producing only 200 barrels a month is not going to be able in 4 days, that's the time it took to find the bodies, to fill even one of those tanks up to 600-700 barrels. It would take 3 months to fill them naturally. So just thinking that through, if in fact the opening on the top, and again I'll hold it up, is too small for Chris Watts to, as he apparently according to the police admitted, too small for him to put those children through, he would have had to do it from the bottom, which means the tank would have had to be empty or he'd have been gushed on by a full tank of oil. So you're saying that there's a pump that goes between those two tanks and he could pump one tank empty and put the, now there's the thief hatch, and you can, I think that's your hand, Wesley, correct? Right next to the thief hatch at the top?
Yeah.
Okay, so we get a relative
that's my
size.
hand to give you scale. Yeah.
And that's at the top.
Yeah,
this is an
so
example tank that's similar.
Yeah, that's part of what kind of bent my brain is, I really don't think you could easily get anything, and it's designed that way for you to not drop anything through that top hatch. They keep it very small, so 8 inches is quite small. That's what made me think you pretty much have to take that bottom manway open, and the standard design, there's 64 bolts, and you got to drain all of the liquids out to really, we have
a picture of that. Put the picture up of the bottom manway, because Wesley's also given us an example photo of this tank where he is standing next to the manway. This is the actual site. What I'd like now is the example site of the manway that Wesley shows us, if we can show that. It's called the clean out manway. There it is. And you can see Wesley's hand. Now you can see the relative size of that opening and all those bolts that would have to be opened, unscrewed and screwed back on. And clearly it is at the bottom of the tank. So it's going to have to be really, that tank's going to have to be literally dry. But Wesley, just in terms of the time, because Chris Watts was seen leaving his house at 5:30 in the morning. And he had to have some kind of an alibi to be working by 7:30, 8:30, or 9:30 in the morning. So there were not, and it's 45 minutes to drive there. So he didn't have an inordinate amount of time at this site to dig a shallow grave for his wife and then do all this work at these two oil tanks. How much time does it take to pump the oil between the tanks? It can't be the same as that forensic vacuum.
No, and I think you could probably do that within an hour, more or less, depending on how full the tanks were.
The drive from the Watts residence at 2825 Saratoga Trail to Cervi 319 that tragic morning took Chris Watts a little bit over an hour. And the first part of the drive is on Colorado Highway, and The second half of the drive is in beginning to be desolate area, and then the end of the drive, almost the last quarter of the drive, is completely desolate without a single sight, a building or person in sight for miles. It's an incredibly eerie trip. The journey from Frederick, Colorado to Rogan, Colorado is about 37.5 miles and is estimated to take about 42 minutes. Rogan is a very isolated, very small community. In fact, the population is only about 440 people, and the size of Rogan is also very small. It's only 1.4 square miles, mostly spanning this vast, vast country land. It is, of course, an agricultural community right there in the community itself, although many residents of Rogan commute to wherever it is they go during the day, and that average commute is almost 30 miles. These are some of the actual dwellings that you can see in Rogan, and a lot of the property there, a lot of the buildings or houses are actually abandoned. There is a big production here, and these almost look like the oil tanks, but they're not. This is a wheat production center, and it's part of the agricultural center that basically is Rogan, Colorado. People who live there and in that area say that the weather can be changing. It can go from very, sunny and dry to very windy and treacherous, and it's seemingly a matter of moments. And because there's so little buildings, population, or anything going on other than this vast Colorado prairie land, you can look out your window or look east or look west and actually see where the weather is changing. So have you ever been in a place where it's nice and sunny and you look in one direction and you can see a storm a brewing? So people that live there claim that it's very much like that, but, amplified to what I think my experience is. Now, keep in mind that after you travel that 37 plus miles from Frederick, Colorado to Rogan, Cervi 319 is 9 miles past Rogan, Colorado from where Chris Watts was traveling. And those roads are all dirt roads, or just, as are described in the Discovery, 2-track roads, which really means backcountry roads that really nobody travels. And you're not probably going to get very far on them unless you're driving a truck.
Yeah? Let's do it. Do a little hair. Ready? Set?
Cece, what's
Cece,
Daddy
I am
doing?
so sorry. When you're
Okay, so let's turn to the weather at Cervi 319 on August 13th and August 14th, 2018. First of all, I can assure you that there was no precipitation on Monday, August 13th, 2018. But I just want to get to where we actually have something going on here. But there's no precipitation on Monday, August 13th. So let's take a look at Tuesday, August 14th, 2018. So you can see here that during the day from 12 a.m. to 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. to noon and all the way going up until just a little bit after 6 o'clock, there is no precipitation at all. And the temperatures were low as you would expect during the morning hours, spiked from 12 going up to about 3 p.m. and then slowly declined in the evening just as you'd expect. Now we see the spike. So you can see the blue line, that's precipitation. So we have a spike at 7 p.m. and then a decline and then another little spike at 8 p.m. So we can see that there was a decent amount of precipitation at 7 p.m. and then continuing for a while and a little more again at 8 p.m. Okay, so if you look at this next chart here, you're going to see that after the 6 o'clock hour, there were heavy thunderstorms being reported in the Rogan area. Now, these were heavy thunderstorms without any noted precipitation. So if you look at 6:53 p.m. and you look all the way over to the right-hand side, you'll see 0.3 inches of rain. And then again, we have another 0.1 inches, and that is our rain event for Tuesday, August 14th. So another thing that is interesting here is how they note the wind speed. So you'll notice at 6:42 p.m., there's a sustained wind of 38 miles per hour. And prior to that, we had sustained winds of 70 miles an hour, 23 miles an hour, 20 miles an hour, 18, 13, and 17, respectively. Now, for a sustained wind, that's quite a wind. And 38 miles an hour sustained wind is pretty significant. If you look to the column just to the right of that, you will see that while there were those sustained 38 mile per hour winds, there were gusts up to 53 miles an hour. In summary, the following is the weather for August 13th and August 14th, Monday and Tuesday of 2018.
The weather was collected in Kinsburg. That is the closest historical weather data collection center. It is approximately 1.7 miles from Cervi Ranch. Historical weather records indicate no rain on Monday, August 13th, and moderate rain, 0.3 inches, on Tuesday, August 14th, 2018. These moderate rain continued for 30 minutes to 90 minutes and was followed by some sprinkles, shall we say. The winds were perhaps the more significant event, with moderate sustained wind from the hours of 6 p.m. to 9 p.m., with strong gusts of wind up to 53 miles per hour.
And why is discussing what happened at Cervi that day important and what's going on at Cervi and the drive to Cervi and all of that? Well, there's a few things. There's different theories on what really happened that day. And I absolutely believe we do not know the full truth as of right now. So the weather on the 13th and 14th very much relate to those theories. They can possibly prove or disprove some of the theories. And also something that is very important is understanding the experience of the human beings on that day. If Bella and Cece, Chris Watts' two beautiful little girls, were in fact alive on that trip from Frederick, Colorado to Cervi 319, this journey of over an hour in the back of that truck must have been absolutely horrifying. So now let's take a look at the recovery efforts per the Discovery. Here, I'm reading from Dave Yuckum's report and the Chris Watts Discovery file. An observation regarding Cervi 319. The Anadarko property is the leased property within the Cervi Ranch, which is 35,000-acre cattle ranch located in southeastern Weld County, Colorado. The leased property, known as Oil Tank Field Cervi 319, is used for extraction and collection and storage of raw crude oil from all local wells and pumps. The Anadarko well site was located approximately 9 miles north of Rogan, Colorado, along dirt roads and dirt 2-track trails. The site itself is a 3 to 4 acre property fenced with barbed wire and secured by a locked gate on the west end. The topography and geofeatures consist of sandy dry soil with sparse native vegetation and dry pasture rangeland for livestock. No structures other than oil collection tanks, pumping equipment, and agricultural infrastructure are visible in any direction for several miles. Within the fenced area are two large tanks approximately 20 feet in height and 12 feet in diameter. Each tank is equipped to hold approximately 400 barrels of crude oil, which is 16,800 gallons. Also within the site was a wellhead, pumping facilities, waste collection, and venting and pressurizing equipment. Within the site, numerous safety precautions and procedures are in place due to the toxic vapors and volatility of the crude oil gas. Anadarko, Day 1, August 15th, 2018. Due to diminishing daylight, auxiliary lighting was brought to the scene by Anadarko. Located to the south and east of the wellhead was an area that appeared to have been recently excavated and filled back in. The area appeared to be approximately 8 feet by 14 feet in diameter. Living foliage was observed partially buried under the uneven ground. Once the search warrant for the property had been confirmed to have been signed, a more thorough search of the property was done. Items of evidence located were collected and packaged by myself and F.S. Schroeder. Photos were taken of the scene with and without markers. Measurements were taken through the use of global positioning or GPS, polar coordinates, and a laser measuring device. Blue Star latent blood reagent was applied to the thief hatch and the tank after positive and negative presumptive tests of the reagent had been done with the expected results. No chemical luminescence was observed on each tank or the catwalk connecting the tanks. On the north edge of the excavated plot was a rusted rake head. The rake head had been placed with a handle attachment portion buried onto the ground. To the east of the plot was a wooden tool handle, as well as a piece of metal that was consistent with connecting a rake head to a rake handle. On the property were two plastic bags. One bag was located on the west of the excavated plot, while the bag was located to the south. To the south of the black plastic bag was a bed sheet. The sheet was fitted and consistent with the same pattern and colors of sheets I observed in the kitchen trash at the home of Saratoga Trail. As the search of the site continued, I observed several strands of suspected hair attached to the interior flange of the top hatch, the thief hatch, on the easternmost crude oil storage tank. After the collection of visible evidence, CMS Maloney and I began the excavation of the suspected grave site, approximately 9 inches below the surface grade. CMS Maloney and I located the adult female victim believed to be Shanann Watts. The victim was in a fetal position with her knees pulled into her chest at the bottom of the grave and her feet directed up towards the top of the grave, her chest and face primarily facing down into the grave, while her back was oriented up. Her head was towards the west, while her feet were towards the east. Her left arm was extended to the east alongside of her head. The victim was wearing a pair of blue underwear and a light-colored shirt. The depth of the grave when the body was removed was approximately 27 inches deep. The Weld County coroner took possession of the victim at midnight and 20 minutes on Thursday, August 16, 2018. All items of evidence collected at the Anadarko site on Wednesday, August 15th were transferred to Detective David Baumhover at midnight and 12:39 on Thursday, August 16th, 2018. CBI remained on the scene throughout the night as part of scene security. Scene processing, Day 2, August 16th. Images taken through the use of the drone were taken prior to the arrival of investigators and support personnel to the scene at approximately 7:30 a.m. At approximately 10 a.m. on Thursday, August 16th, the process of unloading contents of the tanks in search of the two juvenile female victims and other evidence began. Anadarko employees and their subcontractors began the process of unloading and emptying the tanks. This consisted of draining the tanks through a gravity-fed line at the base of each tank into a collection tray, which was 8 by 3 by 6 feet. The tray was then emptied through a 4-inch hose with the three 8-inch strainer into a vacuum system attached to the tanker truck. Once the tanker truck had been filled and no items of evidence had been identified during the course of the draining of the tank and filling the truck was released with its contents from the scene. Once the tank was empty, entry into the tanks for body recovery could only be done by specially trained and certified personnel. Entry and recovery was done by the Colorado State Police Hazardous Materials Team through a side hatch located near the bottom side of the tank. Entry into the tank could only be done with the use of the self-contained breathing apparatus and full hazardous material protection gear. Atmospheric conditions as well as volatile flash points were monitored by Anadarko employees as well as the CSP Hazardous Material Team. Upon completion of emptying the tanks, a juvenile female believed to be Celeste Watts was found buried in crude oil sludge at the bottom of the east tank. The victim was recovered by CSP and was wearing an orange-pink colored shirt, shorts, and a diaper with no shoes or socks. After the recovery of the victim from the east tank, the west tank was drained under the same procedural guidelines. Again, found at the bottom of the tank in the crude oil sludge was the second juvenile female believed to be Bella Watts. The victim was wearing a pink multicolored shirt and shorts, no shoes or socks. The tanks were both searched for additional evidence by CSP. No additional evidence was located. The waste and overflow tank directly to the east of both tanks was visually searched for additional evidence. No evidence was identified or observed.